Welcome back to another episode on Connie Celica, our 1977 Toyota Celica.
We're at a major milestone in this build. We're going to take this car from jack stands to roller status.
With some help from our friends at Whiteline, Fortunato, and Techno Toy Tuning. As you'll recall from our last episode, we did hang the rear axle using the Fortunato rear shocks. So I can't show you that shock, but what I can show you is the rear coilover setup that they sent us. So this is obviously a full coil spring on shock setup. This requires doing some modifying to the shock tower area. You both have to reinforce it. Also have to do some trimming to the sheet metal on the underside here to fit this up into the hole. We're not going to do that today, but we are eventually going to go to a coilover conversion. So you'll see that in another episode. What we're going to do today is just turn this car into a roller, and the quickest and easiest way to do that is to use their separate shock and spring combo. So we've got this guy here, which still has ride height adjustability, as you can see with this collar that sits on the perch. Or actually, I think maybe it goes on the top side. We'll figure that out in a minute, with a big separate spring. The downside to this setup is it's bigger, bulkier, and heavier than the coilover, and you don't tend to have as many spring choices in this strange size spring. So that's really why we want to go to the coilover. Coilovers also give you more range of adjustability. Anyway, this is a nice simple setup. It works well. There's no downside to it other than it being a bit bulkier and a bit more limited in terms of spring rate choices. So Fortune was kind enough to send us both setups because we really weren't sure which way we wanted to go. And we have some interesting options from them for the front that we'll show you in a minute too. So step one is get the spring in there, and then we will use these Whiteline arms and panhard bar to finish the install. All right, so Moose has pulled the shock out just so we can move the axle around more freely to figure out how to fit the spring in here. And we've run into some challenges, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I say it says challenges. The major one, I mean, this spring fits quite nicely into the lower position as it's supposed to. So one of the challenges with the AE86 is the actual spring size is much larger than the Celica. So it doesn't necessarily want to fit
in the hole here.
And if you see there's a spacer, and it's binding up a little bit. So what we have here is we have a bit of a clearance issue on the sheet metal around here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, one, cut this bump stop off. And
we're not going to cut it off, we're just going to unbolt it, right?
We'll unbolt the bump stop. And the nice thing is this has been set up so we can rebolt this in its place, the adjuster, with the spacer to drop it down. And then we have a bit of a clearance issue here.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll clearance this sheet metal around here to allow the spring seat adjuster to sit up in place.
Right.
And that'll get us where we need to be for our adjustable spring height.
So this all stems from the fact that this kit from Fortunato is designed for an AE86, and the Celica uses a slightly smaller diameter spring, which we hadn't really thought about. We could have probably had Fortune build us a different spring perch, but we didn't. So we're going to try to make this one fit.
And I think with just a little bit of sheet metal clearancing, we should be good to go.
Poor Connie, there's bits falling off of you, girl.
Why are you smashing Connie with a hammer, Moose?
Little bit of clearance. You got a little bit of tightness problems with the adjuster ring.
All right, no big deal.
Little gentle.
Just give her a tap, tap, tap.
Little love tap.
Just tap it in. Just tap it in. Give it a little tappy.
So here's all this upper adjustable perch madness we were talking about with the 1-inch spacer that we added.
Plus the original spacer to clear this additional...
That longer center bump stop mount that Celica has compared to the 86. And now you can see he screws the bump stop in through that hole into the factory mount. And that holds the adjustable coilover spring upper perch thingamabobber. So that looks pretty good. stock rear lower link, Whiteline rear lower link. As you can see, they're both pretty beefy pieces. I'm actually surprised that the stock one is so beefy, but that big rubber bushing in the end is going to have a lot of play in it. This Whiteline poly bushing is going to have a lot less play in it. But the important part is this magic right here, the adjustability. That's going to solve some of our problems today, of which we're having many. Generally speaking, you want this adjustability so you can adjust pinion angle, which we'll explain to you in a bit more detail in a minute. But this is also going to let us, in the process of adjusting pinion angle, it's going to let us adjust the angle of this lower spring perch. Because as you'll see if you jump down here with me, Moose, the spring is not really sitting on the lower perch properly, and that's because this perch is kind of sitting on an angle like this. So we need to rotate this to a flat position by lengthening this link. So I've already set it to be about 10 mil longer than the stock link, which should rotate the axle backwards and flatten out that lower spring perch in the process. So this is going to fix two problems for us, pinion angle and the perch issue. So thank you, Whiteline. Oh, tastes kind of greasy and moose-like. I shouldn't know what that tastes like, should I? Things just got weird.
You guys want to know what moose slobber tastes like? Oh, it's salty. Woo, I've never kissed an animal this many times in a row, that's for sure, right?
All right, Moose, it's time for some gentle violence.
Insert the Whiteline adjustable lower arms.
Last arm in, right? We put the other side in already?
We roughed it in. We had some challenges due to the clocking of the lower shackles. Figured that one out. We had a bit of a challenge in that the Celica uses a bolt size which is considerably larger than what an AE86 does.
Yeah.
That took me a little while to figure out because it didn't want to fit. I thought it was an alignment issue.
Yeah.
So we had to go through the bin of bolts.
Yeah.
Find some AE86 size bolts to do this initial test fit. So it's looking good so far.
All right. Slam it in there, Moose. He's like a surgeon, everyone. Just a precision instrument under there. Look at that. Some more gentle violence by the Moose.
I specialize in gentle violence.
Yes, it's like 50 Shades of Grey here in the garage today. Oh, look at that! There's a Whiteline arm in there, everybody.
Yeah.
See if the camera will focus on that. Small victories, people. It's been a hard day. Well, look at here.
I think we gotta get the roll alignment set, but it's close.
That's a spring on the back of our Celica. An AE86 spring with an AE86 perch. We're getting close, guys. Close-ish, anyway. As if to prove the struggle is real, we have discovered a little bit of a problem with our panhard bar. We ordered this AE86 adjustable panhard bar from Whiteline, and even though we've extended it as far as it'll go, it's still a little shorter than the Celica panhard and doesn't quite reach from the chassis attachment point to the point on the axle that we added on when we modified this axle. So had we had this beforehand, we might have been able to position that mounting point on the axle a little further inboard and made this bar fit, but shouldn't be a big problem to either get a longer threaded section here or get Whiteline to send us a Celica version. I think they do make a Celica version one, so I probably just ordered the wrong part. All that said, we don't need the panhard bar on right now for it to be a roller. It's just going on a trailer. But we want to get this sorted out eventually because this performs a very important function. It anchors the axle so that it can't move side to side. So this end bolts to the chassis, this end bolts to the axle, and it prevents the axle from moving side to side. And in the case of the Whiteline, because it's using a stiffer bushing, it also reduces play in general compared to the stock one. The reason you want it to be adjustable is because when you lower the car, the axle gets pushed to the left with the long bar. So you want to actually shorten it or center the axle with the adjustable version like this. So that's what you want the adjustable one for. Anyway, don't need it for right now. So we're going to put the wheel on the back and then move to the front. Before I put the wheel on, I should mention this isn't the final decision on wheel and tire. These are off of Ken's 260Z, again, just for roller stator stuff. And before I put it on, I should mention a couple other things that went on in here when we were fitting up the rear suspension. We were really, really tight with the bottom of the shock to the lower mount. So we actually had to kind of clearance it a bit with a hammer. And it's also really, really tight up here in the shock tower area. So it does clear, but in an ideal world, we'd like to get a bit more clearance there. And I think we will get that when we move the axle forward a bit. Why do we need to move the axle forward a bit, Moose? Because the spring isn't in perfect alignment with the top and bottom mounts right now. As you can see, the spring is kind of sitting off of the lower perch a bit, and that's because the axle is too far back. We can't move it forward right now because we don't have adjustable upper links. I failed to order adjustable upper links. So once I get adjustable upper links, we can use those with the lower adjustable links, move the whole axle forward a bit, get the spring in proper alignment, we'll get better shock clearance. So a lot of these problems will get solved with adjustable upper links. That's really it, I think. Once we get that sorted, we move the axle forward, this suspension setup will work well. Then we need the panhard bar to be the right length, and then I think we'll have a really truly functional rear setup.
And I think part of that as well is that, so the next sort of stage of the suspension is going to be the actual setup and alignment. There's going to be a whole section on that as well.
True, yeah, obviously we'll do a bunch of setup work with alignment, with you dialing in all these adjustable links. So we'll get on the racket and Viato, dial all that in and really show you, how we do that. So there's a wheel on the Celica, Moose. That's kind of exciting. No, I'm not excited to see you, but I am excited by these Fortunato 500 series front coilovers. Brand new spindle. Typically with this car, you would have to take the bottom portion of an OE AE86 or Celica front shock and then customize it to turn it into a coilover. Fortunato makes this for the AE86, but because the Celica has a different top hat, the bolt spacing is slightly different. They made these custom top hats for us, which are obviously camber adjustable. And as you can see, they're also one-way damper adjustable. So I believe they have 21 positions. And having tested the 500 series on the street and on the track in a Lexus IS300, I can tell you they ride really nicely. And when you crank them up to full stiff, they actually work really well at the racetrack. So it's a good two-way setup. If you want something a little bit more hardcore, you can go up to like the 510s like we're running on Ken's RX-7. Anyway, I'm excited by having a fully bolt-on coilover solution for the front of this car. And I believe Fortunato will make you a set of these if you have a Celica that you want to fit their AE86 setup onto. Spring rates, I think we're at 7K front, 5K rear. That'll change as we get to the track and start to dial it in and want to tune it to my driving style and maybe even to Moose's driving style. Though, as you can imagine, Moose's driving style is best described as caveman meets combustion, something like that.
Hello, today we get some fast food.
A little bit more aggressive than Dave.
Yeah, I'm a gentle lover, but in any case, these, as you can see, are already on this side, so this will go on the other side. And I should also give you a quick rundown of the rest of our front suspension setup. I pretty much bought everything that Techno Toy Tuning makes for the front of the car because it's really nice and it solves every problem you can encounter on the front end geometry wise. So everything is fully adjustable. This is their G2X setup, so beautiful lower control arm with adjustability for everything. Spherical bearings everywhere, so zero play in any of the bushings. You've got fully adjustable traction rods. You've got adjustable tie rod ends. And I went for their billet hubs. So you can buy an OE A86 hub, or for marginally more, you can go for the billet hub, which is a lot lighter. Comes with longer ARP studs. I think these are ARP studs. I might be wrong on that, but anyway, a lighter hub, marginally more money. Since I was gonna buy new ones anyway, it just made sense to go billet. So that's our front suspension setup. Moose back in his natural position here on the ground, ready to install all this Techno Toy goodness. I should mention while Moose is bolting this up that this Techno Toy GTX2 assembly, I think that's what it's called, you can add up to 30 mil more front track width with it, which is pretty handy for a track car. It's also fully caster adjustable. You can adjust up to 23 mil of bump steer with it. So that's going to be hugely valuable on a lowered car like this. It's got all the other good stuff too. It's got heat treated spindle pins, big oversized Teflon lined bearings. It's a serious setup for track day guys like us, so it should take a beating and be perfectly happy about it. Nice thing about this front TC rod too is that where it bolts to the lower control arm, I'll just swing around here so you can see, there's, well you still can't see very well here, but it has a bunch of different mounting positions so you can move it more inboard for better tire clearance. So if you're running a really high angle drift setup, you can move that inboard for better tire clearance on, like, you know, big angle drifts. You'll also notice our inner tie rod is very small diameter. That is the MR2 inner tie rod. And we have outer AE86 power steering tie rod ends, which are a larger diameter. So those have to be swapped out for a power steering inner tie rod that we ordered up from our friends at Stage 4 Motorsports. All right guys, well, let's call that front end assembled. I'll just quickly assemble the hubs, and then we can slap some wheels on this thing and drop it on the ground, Moose. Yeah! Is there a happy dance on the ground? Well, I've assembled our hubs and I put the cap on prematurely. That doesn't go on until you put this on the spindle and put the spindle nut on. So a little premature capping action going on there. Also realized, I don't know where the spindle nuts are. We might have sent them with the original stuff to Fortunato when they made us this custom setup.
Or they could be in storage,
I may have to
tagged.
dig around in the pool shed. So we're gonna call this episode a wrap. You may not see the car hitting the ground, but the next time you see it, it'll be getting on the trailer to go to Vibrant Performance for a custom header build and exhaust build. That'll be a 2 or 3 episode bonanza. You're gonna really enjoy it. It's gonna be some sexy tubing happening. Until then, what do you say, Moose? Say some things. Tell the internet.
Things. Lots of things. Big things.
I see what he did there. Clever, Moose, clever.